homesteading, off-grid living, or prepping. There's a lot of crossover between them, but they're not the same things. Just because you're doing one doesn't mean you're doing the other ones. Here we go. Homesteading used to mean living like a settler. Think of like frontier families rushing out to claim parcels of hundreds or thousands of acres. But these days, homesteading looks a lot like growing your own food, maybe living on a little bit of land, having a big garden, with the end goal being to be semi-self-sustaining in one way or another, typically on the food side of things. So providing for your home the bare necessities without needing to go to the grocery store. That can even mean just participating in like a local economy of people who garden or have animals that buy, sell, and trade with each other.
It's very similar to pre-mid 40s, late 40s, before the supermarkets came about. Supermarkets have only been around since the late 40s. So before that time, you either were homesteading, providing your own food, or you were buying all your food from your local rancher, your local farmer.
Next one is off-grid, which is what we're starting out with. We don't really have much of a homestead, we don't have animals, we don't have a garden, but we want to get there eventually. Well, let's get into that. The Oxford Dictionary defines this as not using or depending on public utilities, especially the supply of electricity. That's the definition we go by. Other people who have argued with us a lot online, they're going to argue that living off-grid means that not only are you without public utilities, but you also don't have a cell phone or internet, and you don't have a community, and you don't leave your property for any reason, basically.
Yeah, they think you have to be a Mennonite, like an old school Mennonite, be off-grid.
They want you to be a caveman. We don't accept that definition, we don't use that definition, and no one who actually lives that way is going to see this video and be able to argue with me. So unless you are living off-grid in the way that we are, you're not having the argument.
Yeah, unless you're, what's his name? One of those mountain men that lived in a log cabin in British Columbia.
Yeah, in which case you're not arguing with me in the comments.
From the 1700s, you're not falling into the off-grid category.
So then there's preppers, and I'm going to go ahead and give you the definition, and we'll get into it. Probably the most controversial, so buckle up. A person who believes a catastrophic disaster or emergency is likely to occur in the future and makes active preparations for it, typically by stockpiling food, ammunition, and other supplies.
Oxford is a little bit biased, I think, in their assessment. And that's why this becomes so controversial, because they've made a bunch of shows showing these silly personalities prepping for whatever silly thing that they think they're going to be prepared for, and some of them overlook a lot of things.
It's not that we disagree with this definition of prepping, but the stigma around prepping has made it to where this is very hard to own up to. If you are someone who prepares for emergencies, you fall into the category of prepper with a lot of people who are crazy.
And people think you're crazy.
And people think you're crazy. As soon as you start talking about having a root cellar, or being able to do your own reloading, or living in a remote area and having a group of people that you rely on in case stuff goes bad.
Or treating your own water. Look out, backpackers. Sorry.
Yeah. Real quick, you start getting strange looks. I guess this is the point where we should probably talk about what it is that we want to do.
So, like we said, there is some overlap. This is like a Venn diagram.
Remember Venn diagrams, those three circles? Right. And then let's just see where they overlap. You will not be surprised, because I have constructed a Venn diagram on this. Remember those three circles, how they overlap?
Right. There is some overlap between all these things, right? Like, if you're homesteading, there's a level of preparation you have to have, right? Like, if you have animals and they require some type of food that you can't provide from your homestead, you should probably have a stockpile of that food. Same thing with farmers needing a large amount of fertilizer for whatever they're doing, right? So there's a level of prep for that.
That also puts you on the radar.
That's a problem, yeah. I don't think you should be using fertilizer, but whatever.
Oh, no, I just...
And then there's the bombs, yes.
Yeah.
Timothy. Yeah, there's a level of preparation for the homestead side that, like I said, carries over. The off-grid, same thing. Like, if I'm in charge of my power and my water source, I need to have backups for my well. Backup power for the pump if the pump power goes out. Backup suction capability if my pump dies. and maybe even a backup pump or just hand pump.
Like a bison pump.
Like a bison pump, in order to get water when I need it. As well as for us, we're going to be trying to design a system where when we have sunshine, we can pump our water out of the ground up into a tank above us on the hill and use just gravity to bring it back down to us. So when it's dark out or it's, cloudy, we don't have to pump it into our house. It just falls down into our house from gravity.
Like we said, we fall into really the homestead off-grid side of things, which requires you to be prepared. For us, that means first we're going to get our living situation sorted out perfectly. Right now we're living in a small cabin that was already on the property. It was someone's hunting shack, not particularly glamorous, had no water running to it.
It's dry.
No bathroom. Yeah, no bathroom. And then we spent last fall turning it into a livable cabin for the three of us. We're having a baby here shortly, and we're building a large solar setup just across from our cabin so that we can have storage and an overhang to work under and park the tractor and whatever else.
And power.
And
here.
A lot more power so that we can have refrigeration and an AC and really be set up
and
for living
Starlink.
here long term. Yeah. And Starlink. That's the first step. And then the second step would be to do the homesteading side of it, which means clearing land, putting in fences, getting additional water sources done like ponds, gravity-fed water systems for paddocks and things, and then getting animals on the land so that we can start producing a bunch of our own food. If something happens, we are okay and we don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that we're worried the sky is falling or that, we're going to be invaded by this, that, or the other, or the Yellowstone's going to erupt. I think that we're in somewhat unique times, and we lived very normal lives up until last year. He was in the military. We lived that life, and
we wanted a homestead then too.
It became a lot more serious of a calling or a desire for us, given the climate over the last 4 years between politics and just society, and then the supply chain issues that everybody got to experience. Us having soon-to-be 2 kids, hopefully more, we want to live a lifestyle where we don't have a ton of bills, and we can do a lot ourselves, and we have the space and the time together.
Our goal here is to be predominantly ranching, but also producing other crops and being able to trade, sell, barter with our neighbors around here that maybe are better at one thing or another.
Yeah.
Large-scale farming is not happening around here because of the terrain, right? But we can do kind of agroforestry type stuff, almost like the Peruvians with their stepped systems, right, coming up down the hills. And then these areas down here, the lower lying areas, are rolly enough that cattle can walk on them. It's not a big problem, but we need to turn it into pasture. Yeah. So we gotta start really, really clearing and putting out seed and stuff.
Baby steps.
Yeah.
We gotta get the cabin ready for us to have this baby in about 10 weeks. And then we have enough to do after that we'll spend the fall and probably a lot of the winter here clearing so that in the spring we can see what starts to pop up.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we already saw can't remember where it was. It was somewhere on the property where we had cleared a while ago, and there's sunlight there, no more leaves or anything, and we're growing. I saw a little patch of grass. I was like, oh my gosh, there's grass. We didn't seed it or anything, it just popped up. So there's something under there. We just gotta unearth it and let it see the light of day because of all these trees. So
yeah, we I don't think we claim at all to be preppers, but there is a certain level of preparedness that you have to have living this lifestyle.
Yeah, we don't prepare for hyper-specific events.
No.
Right, like the Yellowstone thing. I don't even see a reason to prepare for that. The whole world's gone. You might as well spend your time with your family. Surviving that initial event's not going to be good. It's not going to be something you can survive long-term on. So
yeah. If we could lose some of the stigma and the nonsense around the prepping aspect of any of these lifestyles, people would be more apt to jump in and have a homestead or go off grid, and it would be so beneficial for our society if more people were interested and willing to do that.
I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, we're only 2 generations, 3, I guess 4, whatever.
Depending on how fast you reproduce.
I'm only 2 generations away from people that survived the Great Depression on a farm. They were poor already, and then when the Depression came around, they were like not poor anymore because everyone was poor, but they had food, and they didn't even really notice that the Depression happened around them. And prior to that and during that time, all of human history up until when supermarkets were around, people had food on hand. People were prepared. They weren't prepared for like, oh, if this specific situation happens, it's more of just like, yeah, I don't have a lot of food or money, so I'm going to save and prepare for when times will get tough, because times inevitably get tough.
Yeah.
Can't be perfect forever. That was just how it was. And when my grandpa died, like, there was just so much stuff in his garage. You're like, what? Why did you keep this random scrap of metal? And it was like, they didn't get rid of anything because it would eventually either be worth something or be useful to fix or build something.
Yep.
Because you couldn't go out and buy it. I think that it's been purposely stigmatized and then just accelerated because of kind of some of the weirdos that are like prepping for very specific things and thinking that they're going to be able to survive them. Yeah, I think, but it's been on purpose because when we were like that, we weren't as easily controlled. I mean, when I was in elementary school in California, we had earthquake kits. That was prepping. And every year when there wasn't an earthquake that required us to like get under our desks and pray, we got to eat our earthquake kit. So you always put real good stuff in that earthquake kit.
In California.
Yeah, you always put good stuff in your earthquake kit because at the end of the year you got to eat all your treats. So
you got to worry about people like burning down neighborhoods on a dime and earthquake kits and wildfires and serial killers.
That was my first investments, was earthquake kits. Because you'd put real good stuff in it, and by the end of the year, the price of that Pop-Tart went up, and it was, hey man, I got Pop-Tarts, what do you got? Stop, dude.
No.
Anyway, I'm Woody. Stop, dude. I can't. Seriously, I can't. I'm just going to be laughing maniacally into the camera. Let's like and subscribe. Will you go over there? God. Anyway, I'm Woody. This is Woody's Barndominium. If you are interested in watching us on our journey here in our off-grid cabin build series, please like, subscribe. We post Fridays at 7 Central. Thanks. See you around.